Hello, and welcome to my goofy little overview of the Razer Wolverine 3 versus the Xbox Series X controller for Tekken 8 specifically. Alright, now for my favorite part of the day, where I get to talk out of my ass about why I like these controllers, what I don't like about these controllers, and I think more importantly, the big differences that I felt between the two, both in gameplay and in physical feel, I suppose. So, let me start with the Wolverine V3. If I had to describe the Wolverine V3 in a single word without being able to physically place it into somebody's hands, it would be tactile. I think tactile is a great summary of what this controller was aiming for. Every single component on this controller feels like it's utilizing a micro switch of some kind. The bumpers when they're in lock mode, the two extra bumpers that are included on the controller, the four back paddles, the action buttons, the D-pad, and I'll talk about the D-pad in a second, the menu buttons, everything feels like it was made with the word tactile in mind. Now, on the one hand, this is the dopest aspect about this controller because it almost gives you the opportunity to IRL hit confirm inputs. Like doing quarter circle back 1 with Brian or quarter circle forward 1+2, I always struggled to do those inputs on the standard Xbox D-pad because I wouldn't know, oh, did I hit this diagonal or did I accidentally skip the diagonal and just go down to back, or did I over rotate the diagonal, and not being able to audibly hear each individual click, click, click go up or down the D-pad. With the Wolverine, this almost became child's play. I was hitting quarter circle inputs with Brian more consistently than I've ever hit quarter circle inputs with him. And my inputs in general just cleaned up. And it's not an aspect that I pointed out in the comparison videos, but it's something that if you watch the input history, you will be able to notice that the inputs are less and less on the Wolverine compared to the Xbox controller, just because I don't have a lot of faith in the Xbox controller's membrane switches being able to confirm every single input that I want to do without having to buffer it first. However, on the other hand, this is the biggest learning curve of the controller, and it's also the biggest pain in the ass about it. Because the controller is so precise, it will not let you skip an input. And if you overextend on your inputs, it's gonna know, and it's gonna make you suffer for it. I couldn't tell you how many times I had to readjust the way I was doing certain inputs and having to input them more carefully because I'm used to having a more lax thumb on the Series X controller. On the Series X controller at the very least, play with kind of the meaty part of my thumb, whereas on the Wolverine, I had to play with the tip of my thumb because of how precise you have to make your inputs, or else the D-pad will make you suffer for it. Now, whether this is a positive or negative, I think could be entirely subjective, but it is the part of the controller that I personally had the biggest learning curve around. Also, very quickly, while I think the paddles at the back of the controller feel great and they would sit well in other titles, for Tekken specifically, I don't think I'd ever use them. Specifically because I wouldn't want to accidentally hit a button that I don't want to, especially if it's an important button like the Rage Art button or the Heat Burst button. I wouldn't want to run the risk personally of accidentally having one of those back paddles mapped to that button and then getting cooked for it in match. So just a fair warning there if you ever decide to map those back paddles to something. Now, giving credit where credit is due, I think the Series X controller definitely beats out the Wolverine in the comfort department, and not necessarily because it's the most comfortable controller on planet Earth, but just because I know how it feels. I know what it feels like to play on a Series X controller, and I know how my inputs feel on a Series X controller. That being said, I'm not going to say that it's the best controller on planet Earth. The membrane switches inside of the Series X controller have been outdated for damn near a decade now, and I just wish that Microsoft would put something in their controllers other than membrane switches. They've updated their D-pads to be able to take micro switches. Why can't they update their action buttons? Now, I understand that the Wolverine also has a hybrid micro switch membrane switch inside of their action buttons, but honestly, the Wolverine still beats out the Series X controller in that department tenfold, and I just don't understand why Microsoft can't include micro switches in their action buttons. I think that it would do nothing but good, especially in a fighting game setting. I'd also like to mention that the Razer Wolverine has its own software. All of the Xbox compatible Razer controllers can be programmed through the Razer controller software app on the Xbox itself. This is what allows you to remap buttons, assign macros, assign sensitivities to joysticks, etc., etc. I probably won't be using this software a ton just because I don't really have the need to remap anything or add extra inputs to my controller that I don't want. I'm pretty much leaving it bone stock as if I was playing a Series X controller anyways, but I figured I'd mention that it does come with the software. Another quick note is that some people are concerned about the refresh rate on the Wolverine V3 when paired with the Xbox Series X. To be completely transparent, it's not something that I experienced a ton of issues with on my end. I didn't experience a ton of input lag or anything like that. I thought that everything felt fine and it wasn't something I was super concerned with while playing. The Razer Wolverine V3 Tournament Edition, at the very least, is wired only. It is not wireless. The V3 Pro is wireless, and there are some component upgrades and just certain aspects about the V3 Pro that are different compared to the tournament edition, but in my honest opinion, it's not really enough of a difference to justify the extra $100 you'd be paying for the Pro Edition. Speaking of price, the Razer Wolverine V3 comes in at $99 USD. The current Xbox Series X Standard Edition controller comes in at about $69.99 USD. That's about a $30 price difference, but in my honest opinion, for what you get out of it, both in feel and in gameplay, I think that it's more than worth the extra $30. The free software, the upgrades to the actual components inside of the controller, the customization, I think that Razer can take my $30 and I'm going to be pretty happy about it. But I think that's going to be about all from me, despite the fact that I love the Series X controller, and I think that the original Xbox controller is one of the most iconic and one of the best designs for a controller in console history. I think I'm going to be playing my Razer Wolverine for now, at least in Tekken. So here's some more gameplay to kind of close out the video. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings for however long this has been. And yeah, have a good one.
Round 2. Fight!